Hi, I'm Ben and welcome to Field Foley episode 17. Today I'm honored to welcome Melissa Pons, a dedicated field recordist and sound designer from Portugal on a mission to capture nature's symphonies. At the non-profit Earth FM, she helps to curate submissions to the now over 700 immersive natural soundscapes from all over the world. Melissa's own field recording adventures took her to the Rainforest and into a Wolf Rehabilitation Center where she's documented the captivating sounds of our beautiful planet. Her commitment to preserving Earth's wonders extends to crafting concept albums from her recordings, and I wholeheartedly recommend giving them a listen. So thank you, Melissa, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
I wanted to talk to you for a long time, actually, because I've been in contact with you, I think 2 or 3 times over Twitter.
Yeah.
And we spoke about like the Wolf recordings, and I was really impressed by like the sounds they made, like the sounds I haven't heard before. And it felt very, I don't know, for lack of a better word, it felt very real and very, very true. And and I looked into like podcasts where you appeared, and then also this one article actually on Earth FM from Niels. Oh no, I don't have the last name.
Yeah, Niels Mosch. I'm not sure. He's from Germany, so he can help me with the accent. I think he's Mosch, or is it something else?
It should be it. Okay.
Yeah.
And the article was titled "Field Recording: A Plea for Recording Nearby," and his credo was like you should record your own material in your locality, because that's where you are from, and that's where you can record the truest. And also, it's the best thing for the environment to not fly around the world and record everywhere.
Right.
And so like the general credo of like record locally and hire globally is something that really spoke to me, because in the past I was thinking like, maybe at some point I can visit maybe this natural park or maybe this site, but now I'm more inclined of like finding people that are from these areas, and they can record it with more care and with all the knowledge and all the cultural like sensibilities, I would say. So I wanted to ask you about like this whole topic of like recording ethics. What's your stance on it? And maybe this is a good place in the podcast to reach people that are maybe not familiar with all this.
This is a really long topic, and it's very multi-layered, really. So I think that by recording locally, to start with that, you are, as he says very well, you are, even if you have been living in this place for like 10 years, let's say, you will indeed practice some sort of listening that will indeed make you getting closer to this environment, to the people, to the culture, to everything that is in it. And you can also involve people. He speaks about some experiences where people around him, because he can show up with his equipment, and invariably this brings a lot of curiosity, right?
Yeah.
If a camera brings, usually sometimes the sound equipment, people are not so familiar, especially if you come around with a big fur for the microphones. It's always curious, and it can be a good starting point. It doesn't always. Sometimes the encounters are a bit hostile, because I think people are afraid that they're being spied or something like that. This has happened to me a few times, but I think just a little bit of conversation can clarify these things. And I think in this sense it's very interesting to understand the dynamics of a place. I can try to be short on this example. I live in the countryside since 2.5 years ago, and I was not familiar at all with what it is to be in the countryside. And of course, I think most people coming from the city, there's a romanticized vision of things. We can extrapolate this to go, even further to the South Hemisphere in some places, for example, but staying more locally now. And to hear the environment, to hear the people talk, especially the older people, how things have been evolving, how their lives were there, how nature has transformed or has been transforming through so-called development, which is also tricky because, infrastructures, they are generally needed, but they always bring consequences that sometimes we don't really necessarily think about, but they can be very prejudicial. And two quick examples about this. I live by the biggest artificial lake in Europe.
Okay.
Let's start there, okay? And this is a very dry area here in Portugal, and it's traditional. I think one of the poorest regions in the whole country, and it has been like that for a long time. People were traditionally just farmers or this kind of professions, and there was periods of really not a lot of food available because it's really hard to cultivate in here. The ecosystem is like the Dehesa, which only exists here in Spain and in some parts in Morocco. So it's not very varied, and people also needed to domesticate animals for grazing, for meat, for milk, and so on. It is a very beautiful place. I'm in love with it every day. In 2001, I believe, or 2002, there was a construction of a very, very, very big dam, and you can actually see it if you go on the Google past images, and if you see it from the 80s, I think the satellite pictures, I think the earliest one are from the late 80s or beginning of 90s, and you can see this body of water just grow. It's really crazy actually to see like a time lapse of this. And the transformation on the landscape and the life of people, it's really not insignificant at all. First of all, the animals that existed here before that and now, it suffered immensely, really, really a lot. There is a guy here that he's about my age, is 30 something. So it's actually, not this oldest people. And he would say something very funny, which was, if you were to kick a rock, 3 rabbits would jump below it. So far, I've only seen maybe 1 rabbit or 2. I'm not sure if it was the same, for example. So it was full of these small animals, a lot of birds. There was a river that crossed the village here. And everyone that is on their 40s and up, they're spent, especially the boys, because it's still very gendered society, of course, unfortunately, but it's just how it is. They lived their childhood by this river, and I heard countless stories, of like boys being, doing their boy stuff. The river, that's where they learned to swim with their fathers, where they were playing, where they learned how to fish. And this was also bizarre to me. I didn't really understand, but now the river is underwater, which is a really bizarre thing to picture, right?
Yeah.
Lots of villages were underwater, so many people have to be relocated to villages that were newly built. By then, it changed the agriculture. It changed also the way that a lot of land is being exploited. I'm not saying that this wouldn't happen if this dam hadn't existed. So a lot of this natural landscape was transformed into monocultures, especially of olive trees, cork trees, and now more recently almond trees, which is really very, very sad to see. So now everything is very like geometric, you see like everything very delineed, very precisely.
Yeah. Very shaped by humans.
Yeah, completely, like so fake. Regardless of that, I think we cannot just look at the things on just one side, because there were shortages of water. In the summer, we're talking about temperatures of like 40 degrees, 45 many times. And the summer is very long, it's kind of from April until October. And there's 2-3 months where the temperatures really are very, very high. A lot of crops end up, getting lost because of that, because things get really, really scorched, people included. So that's why people here don't work between like 12 and 4 in the afternoon, because, they will be cooked, literally, right? Regarding that, the whole country makes jokes about this region because they think people here are lazy, but indeed, actually, they work a lot, but they start really early in the morning, and then they typically go work until dinner time or beyond, because of this scorching heat during the summer.
Yeah.
But people need water, in their homes for their daily needs. And the fact that we have this dam allowed that to happen, and that these shortages don't impact people in the same way. And I hear all these stories, and I come here, I've been recording a lot here, and I've been recording lots of birds and, a lot of different stuffs, and I think it's beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, swimming in April in the lake, this is beautiful, and so on and so on. And then I hear these stories back, and there's so much history, and I don't want to lose these memories, because in 20 years, so many of these people are not going to be alive anymore because it's a very elderly population.
Yeah.
And they also told me, we're going to speak about wolves, I guess, maybe. There used to be wolves here. So I don't know if this is, a spread out fact that people know a lot, but Portugal and Spain, but I know a bit more about Portugal in specific. The whole country, except some places by the coast, was filled with wolf population, the Iberian wolf. And it was hunted almost to extinction. So much that now there has been some recovery in the last 2 decades, I believe, but they basically live just on the north strip shared with Spain. And there used to be wolves here. And I've been talking to people who remember hearing the wolves howling at night. And they were also hunted to extinction. Actually, I spoke to someone the first summer I was here that said, I remember when the last wolf was killed. And, this is really, really sad. And you could think, man, there could have been another way.
Yeah.
But I think we also should... I don't sympathize with this idea at all, obviously, of course. But I think we should put in perspective these people that had these tremendous difficulties in sustaining life, like with food, which is like the most basic thing. They couldn't afford to have their sheep killed by wolves, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Of course, there's other factors. The wolves provoked, the lack of them provoked an unbalance in the system. So then there was lots of wild boars that now are also, heavily hunted here. There's also like inbreeding with, it's really complicated situation. But I feel that just the act of listening, regardless if I am recording or not, just this act of listening really allows me to put a lot of humanity with all the faults that it has, with all the flaws also, but it really allows me to understand. And I was also thinking today that there's a lot of spotless starlings here. I'm kind of bragging a lot about this on Twitter because I think they are so cute and their song is so beautiful and they mimic a lot of other birds and they're very comical also, like their display and how they sing and everything. It's like a Pixar film kind of thing. Yeah. And they are everywhere. And I wake up with them every day. And I think it's really, really literally makes me smile. Yeah. And I really love the way that they sound within the village because of the materials that the houses are built with. The acoustics is really beautiful.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is. And, it's not specifically like, raw nature at all. But there's a lot of beauty in it. And actually, in fact, like I have them as neighbors. I think because they like to live around the houses, they are in the fields also, but they are more prevalent just, between the houses in the streets. And I think that if my only pursuit was to go a little bit further, this is a very tiny village. I mean, I walk 10 minutes and there's no one for kilometers. It's a privilege, actually. I hope it doesn't change that much. But if I was just focusing on this concept of pure nature, which is a bit BS, and maybe we can touch on that later not. But I think I would not be able to appreciate these things,
Yeah, this interconnection between the humans and the world itself.
And the rest, of course. And also people know that I do that. I think when I came here, so my aunt is from here. She has a house here, but she has not been living here for many years. She had to go to one of the examples that she had to go and get education in Lisbon, and then she just been there for her entire life. And I can imagine it's a small place, so it's like everyone is cousins with everyone. Very tiny, so I think the news spread quite quickly that someone new was here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this still stands, but I was known as the girl who records sounds.
Of course. You'll probably be the only one that records sounds here, right?
Yes, but there has been people that has been recording sounds to send to me now with their phones. And they say, oh, it was beautiful, all these birds in the spring and the cows,
nice.
and then so this has happened.
So you're spreading the open ear for nature. That's nice.
Yeah, and again, this is one of these interactions that is happening because, in a way, I'm, a bit out there attesting that I do this, that this is something that I do. So I think just the creation of these relationships can be really beautiful, and the fact that we are listening to everything. So on the local part, like, this is what I would have to say. Of all the good sides of it, even if the knowledge that we get from it sometimes is sad things, but that's how life is. And next, within your question was a bit complex. So next,
I mean, it was just like basically I just started to throw this topic at you because I know it's a big one, but I just wanted to get started and see where we go with this because as you said, it's a big thing and it is very faceted and just like you said, for example, I have doing several times during the year when I am like brushing my teeth in the morning and I have my windows open, I can hear the birds because I have like a massive forest almost right next to the house. But on the other side, I have the Autobahn. So it's like traffic on the one side and very like industrial buildings. And on the other side, it's just, you can just see trees. And this this duality is very, very clear to me always. And I hope, I can just hope that this place stays as long as possible on that brink, because the other thing would be then that there would be more houses and more development and woods would slowly vanish. So you would be in the middle of a city. So right now we're like on the rim of the city, so to say.
Yeah.
And I really like that because I can just walk into the woods and after a while I can't hear a lot of traffic anymore, especially during certain times. But also, as you said, it's like very convenient to be near the city and have all the amenities. And just speaking of, for example, hospitals, we live in a big house with my whole family. So if someone gets sick, or we have elderly in the house as well that need like doctor care. So that's, we can't live like in the middle of nowhere, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to see it. But yeah, and that is like this, I know this place. I've been here for almost all my life with some pauses, but I know the areas and I know like the different nature, the different scenes we have here, and we have a lot of caves here which are beautiful, which I really like to just sit there and listen to it if I can. So yeah, all those nooks and crannies and all those wisdom of knowing when, like time of day, but also seasons, when something happens and when something interesting is, and trying to capture that and trying to also like get other people interested and excited about this, because like you said, like people approach you with like the recordings, and I have the same now where people are like, oh, I have found this thing which sounds really nice, or I have heard this bird, I have no idea, and they tend to keep a more open ear after we talked about like my passion for recording in general. And I really like that, to get all those different views, and also like just today, like your view and your local view of your surroundings. It's always very interesting and fascinating to me.
Precisely, yeah. Well, I don't know if you would like to now go on the reverse, which is to go and record not locally.
Yeah, of course. Let's speak about that, because as I mentioned briefly, that was in the beginning when I was like fresh at recording. I was like, oh, I want to record all the waterfalls, and I want to go to this lake, and I want to visit this volcano and this stuff. And this changed over time, fortunately. So this really, I think we can kind of dismember this this big topic in some others. And I think that, who hasn't had or has this sort of wish? I have it for sure. Course. I have obviously, a few places that I would really love to go to experience and to record. But I also think about my role in it. Sometimes I think I'm overthinking a little bit. And I was talking, since we're going to speak maybe about Earth FM, we're doing a program now that I don't know if you're aware. It's a nature field recording grant program.
in which we attributed equipment and some budget for expenses to 5 people of the Global South.
Oh, nice.
This is because of the immense lack of representation, let's say that, when it comes to the Global South specifically, in which I believe that until this, I'm talking specifically about Earth FM, like what we have it and how the map was, composed and so on. But all the recordings we had in the African continent, for example, they were done by people in the global north. All right. So we're talking a bit about, going to another place. And of course, there's this curiosity, and I think we have, some sort of, not entitlement, but why wouldn't we not have the right to visit other places, right?
Yeah.
I was, these days I was reading some sort of manifesto or just a small essay about tourism. And I just want to quote a small paragraph. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Sure.
Yeah. So it's from someone called, it's from Jaime Martinez Luna. And this is called Honoring the Possibilities That Tourism Brings While Apprenticing Its Conquesting Consequences. And he says, every tourist wants to resolve unsatisfied needs in the place they live in. Let us focus our reflection on international tourism. If we affirm that tourism wants to solve or resolve needs that the foreigner's place of residence does not satisfy, it can be deduced that they come to fill gaps, that they want to live experiences otherwise unknown to them. This means that you are a tourist because you need to have what you don't have, and even if it's just looking at a landscape, it's because it's lacking in the place one comes from. To think that tourists only come to spend their money, a resource that is required locally, is to devalue our own way of life here. Let us be clear. This does not mean that we reject the lessons that teach us that this process of touristification expands the power of foreigner capital. In market relations, our geography contributes to the process of invasion, extraction of resources, and the exploitation of our work. So, I think we can speak a lot about, this need for adventure, to see new things. I'm a person, I need to live by novelty, otherwise I get very bored, in many, many aspects of my life. But everything that comes with the biggest form of tourism nowadays, it can be very prejudicial to the peoples in those places. Even what is so-called like sustainable or for nature tourism, it's very, very tricky, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any ill intention from anyone who wants to visit other places. And I think it's also very important to have contact with other cultures and other types of environment. I think it's very healthy. When I think about biodiversity, I don't only think about the biodiversity of a place as in what so-called nature offers, but also like a diversity on cultures. I think like it's just, it helps everyone grow. But we could also speak about how immigrants usually are so badly treated in any country, especially like Europe. I mean, we're going through something that is quite, maybe it has always been like that, but there are points in time where things, I think they kind of explode in a way, in a little bit, in some way.
They seem to spike, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But as a field recordist, I think that, or any person that is documenting, it doesn't have to be sound, can be like documentary, photography, whatever, anything that uses media. I think it's the responsibility of that person to really be open, not judgmental, but understand to what place they are going to.
Mm-hmm.
There are many places that are huge touristic attractions, especially when it comes to nature, that have been formed by the eviction, always violent, of people who have been living there for endless generations, and that helped to shape the nature that we look at, that we are, sought after. But now we have been kind of sanitizing and molding the aesthetics of this nature according to the work that I have been doing. So I think this is start to be a bit more common knowledge, because in the last years there's been more awareness of the importance of indigenous people specifically to their environment.
Yeah.
So the most biodiverse places on the planet are places where there's always been intervention of indigenous people in a sustainable way. The Amazon, the Congo Basin, for example. So this idea of nature exists because those people worked in and with the land. And there is a tendency that it has been shaping our imaginary since all documentaries, Lion King even, for example, that wilderness is a place that exists as it is in a sort of pure state, because people don't live in there. And this is a very big problem, because these processes are extremely violent. And if we go to some of these places, there's always a hierarchy of power, right?
Yeah.
Because I go there with my expensive equipment that is made with materials that have been sourced from these places that were degraded, in which people were, violated in many ways, expelled, got sick, were killed, raped, beaten. This is happening, a little bit Africa, Americas, even some places in India. There's a lot of things like that. And then we bring back to our places, to Europe or, United States, or an image of a pure nature that has this past and present full of these atrocities. And we also think that, but since last 20 years, the tiger population has actually, grown 10% or whatever. And then we call the peoples that used to live there and hunted for food poachers. While on the other side, there are people from the rich countries paying I don't even know how many thousands to kill a lion or an elephant or a rhino or whatever.
And post it on Instagram, yeah.
And I think that these dynamics really need to be very present in our minds. I think knowledge really is power. And I think this knowledge should actually allow us to make the best decisions that we can do. Okay? This is my opinion. Because, if you evict people, you take them off their lands and you kind of erase them from history in a way, we're losing generations of knowledge about the fauna, the flora, plant medicine, worldviews, mythology, and we throw them on the lowest end possible of capitalism. They are thrown into like the depths of poverty, right? Because before they were sustaining themselves with the land and living in some sort of harmony. And I'm not trying to romanticize anything here, right? What I believe is in autonomy of these people, or even people from the countryside, not necessarily only indigenous people. But I think in many minds, there's also the idea that indigenous people are primitive, and however they seek to live their lives, it's about their own autonomy. So in my perspective, this really speaks about decolonizing our own minds and to deconstruct these myths really and understand why they have been propagated and where they come from, and really to seek out other ways of seeing and other ways of understanding. But so I believe in the autonomy of these people, and there are obviously ways in which I believe we can do this in a proper way. and that is to come with curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And openness, and make sure that, if it comes with, if we're talking about supporting by paying guides or by supporting the business within the tourism industry, even then I think we should be careful, because many national parks, for example, they have been created on these premises of eviction,
Yeah.
violence, and this shaping of nature just to satisfy our pleasure. And as people who document whatever media they are using, it's also this kind of voyeurism kind of thing, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing in itself, but it's really enhancing the separation from humans and everything else. And it's really tricky because, in our case, we have been born in this context, and it's really difficult to actually grasp, I think, what is like to not seeing yourself as separated from nature, right?
Yeah.
I some time ago I heard a podcast with Field Longo. She's the director of Survival International, which is organization that fights for indigenous rights. And she works a lot with Masai, for example. And she was saying she was in Tanzania, I believe. And one of her Masai friends told her, because she wanted to take a picture, she thought it was really beautiful. I don't know, the trees and, the environment, and there was maybe a zebra, and there was the houses of the Masai, and there was the domestic animals. And she pulled up her phone to take a picture, and she said, "I think this is so beautiful." And he said, "Yeah, really? Well, this for us this is home." and you see, it's like where we see this like immense beauty. I'm not saying it's not beautiful, of course, but for them is home. It's not something to take pleasure from in this.
Yeah, it's the normal environment, the living, breathing world around them. Yeah.
Right. So I've been starting to be more and more conscious about this. And, I'm talking about myself here, okay? So I would never go to these parks. Never. Because I cannot support this kind of business and this kind of operation. But there are indeed small organizations, but it's probably things that, are barely online.
Yeah.
That maybe you can just reach, maybe it's just sometimes it's just, 4 or 5 people that have a piece of land and they really try to take care of it in the best way possible. And maybe they have some, ways to try and mold the regional politics or something. It can be a countryside, but it needs to come without judgment. And I think we cannot really remove people from the picture,
Yeah, that's what you mentioned earlier when you said like that there's no such really no such thing as like this pure nature untouched.
Yeah, this is a myth.
Because it's all a big ecosystem where we all influence each other, and I think that's something that is as I got older also starting to sink in my thinking as well. And because I very much saw this all in a very black and white kind of, well, you shouldn't touch anything at all, or you have a city, you have those both extremes and nothing in between. But all those like little dynamics, as you said, like for example, they needed this water to survive, and that meant that other species suffered, but it was like this ecosystem that grew like naturally because of all those interconnected events and like of poverty, of people trying to survive, of maybe even like missing technology and like, let's say far back. We now have more advanced ways of doing something that's less invasive if we care to do it. So, I mean, oftentimes people are still like just, ripping open the earth for everything. And but like technically we are getting more and more advanced in that we can live even better with nature, and that's something that hasn't been there for many years before. And all this world is interconnected in so many ways that there is nothing even if I'm staying here, just like you said, I buy my recorders. I need of course, I try to use reusable batteries and everything else, but still, those batteries have been manufactured somewhere, and I have no idea where the raw material came from, and it's most probably somewhere with not great working conditions. And there's no such thing as not being involved in all this.
Exactly. This is a really good point. There's no such thing as not being involved. Just when we bring our technology with the best intentions that we can have, we're all compliant in it. I do think, if you allow me to disagree a little bit or to provoke a little bit,
Sure.
I think this technology, I think some people call it techno-optimism. Obviously, I'm also not against technology. Hello, I'm having, some devices here right now.
Yes.
And I, took a bus to go to town today, this kind of thing. But I think that what should be more on the front page of our lives is to reshape and to reconsider our relationship with the planet. And I think this actually can really mean to change a lot of our lifestyle and the way that we see nature, to not see it as an extractive thing. I'm speaking of capitalism as an extractivist, big monster policy kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And the relationship of when we say, oh yeah, the gold was taken from the land of the Yanomami in North Brazil, in the Amazon. And this happens inside countries as well. This is a very good example. In the Scandinavian countries, there are the Sami people. They live mostly in the northern part of Scandinavia. They go through the same thing, right? They are also evicted. They are forbidden to fish from the rivers, but then that place opened a power plant of some kind and polluted the rivers. But the people that live super sustainably as well, they cannot live like that anymore. And there's all these forceful evictions and throwing people into something that has not been the way that they live, and in many cases not the way that they want to live. So we don't even need to go to Brazil, to see these examples happening. So, and I think that, the technology thing, the trust in technology to solve, I think this can incur a little bit in a false sensation of hope, which I understand because things are really screwed up. It's really, really screwed up, unfortunately, on many levels. But if you just put the environment part, although I really believe that everything is completely connected, wars included, typically for resources and land for resources. Yeah, what I believe is that we need also to be able to imagine just a different kind of worldview, even, So, of course, we're going to need technology, to clean up oceans, to produce things in better ways, but I think we actually need to produce way less.
Yeah.
And to be way less shallow,
Yeah, that's also the point a bit that I was trying to make is that it's getting more and more to that point where we can recycle stuff that we used to throw away way easier, and that's a kind of technology that is very, very dear to my heart because I've never felt comfortable with, for example, even when I was younger, with throwing away batteries. It was always something that seemed strange to me because these are these blocks of metal and really rare materials I have guessed in the past. And after they are empty, we just throw the whole thing away and they probably land on some dump that can't be the way to do things. And the same thing goes also for there's a whole movement called Rights to Repair, which is, in my opinion, something that is very, very important, that we all as consumers be very proactive in choosing the stuff that we can repair ourselves and being very vocal and very, not only vocal, but
participative.
Yeah, sometimes people call it voting with your money, right? Don't buy products where you know that the corporate structure is all set on you buying something, and if it breaks, you throw it away and you buy a new one, because that is not the way we want to live. And that is definitely the thing that influences me in deciding what to buy. especially, for example, for microphones. I try to find little known manufacturers that maybe do them themselves, and you have repair plans for it. And I mean, all these things, for example, for me is very important, because I know that if I buy like a really good microphone, that I want to use it for 20, 30, 40 years, maybe as long as I live, if I can repair it forever, because it's a precious thing. And not just because it's like it was expensive, because it is a precious thing, because there's so many rare materials, there's so many thought and time goes into producing something that makes this recording even better, that I myself feel I have to have respect for all the time and materials that flow into that. Right. And like throwing something like a microphone away is something that I never want to do. I mean, I try to find, if I can't do it myself, I try to find someone else to helping me in repairing stuff, because that for me is like a priority. But as you said, of course, there's also this like, oh, technology will save us all, and we can believe in that and just go on as we were. And that is like this false security that maybe people fall into, that maybe are also like overwhelmed with, like you said, like it's a really bad situation, and there's so many bad things going on. But I think if you're conscious about that and trying to constantly look at yourself, at your behavior, at your consumerism, that is at least a step in the right direction to see where this can go. But you're right. I mean, for example, manufacturing is one of the most cruel things that we have right now. We don't have, I don't know, in my mind, I don't have a clear path into how we can change this as fast as it should change. But
I think, here we're talking a lot about, consumer choice. And I think not everyone, but some people can have a choice in the way that they consume. It's often a privileged situation, right?
Yes.
Especially not obviously not the only example. There's a lot more, but I think it's a very common example for example, to buy clothing from brands that allegedly how do you say allegedly, thanks. That they are made with organic cotton and with low impact and so on, but you will never pay less than like €60 for a blank t-shirt, right?
Of course. And not everyone can do that.
Not at all. Like, you cannot ask a single mom of 3 to buy a t-shirt for a 5-year-old kid that costs €40 or something like that. So and it's really weird. Like, it's even obscene that supposedly, in order for many people to do this kind of quote right choices, they have to have a lot of money. You know. But I think the problem really relies a lot on like big corporations, that they always have their foot in governments, and they appropriate means of production, lands. Like, for example, I know last year, I don't know if it's still the same person, but the president of WWF was like the president of Coca-Cola. And all these kind of dynamics and relationships, when you start to think about it, it's like, oh man, and for us in our generation, I mean, our parents didn't grow up with this sort of conscious, most of our parents. I know there was like a lot of climate movements already from the 70s and so on, but that was reserved for like quote hippies and these people on psychedelic drugs and stuff. They were, I'm not framing them like that, but they have been framed like this kind of flower people or whatever, which is a way of diminishing their fight also and their causes. Which still happens a little bit nowadays, maybe under other framings, but suddenly we're like, oh man, like there's really the 1%, and they have so much power, and I understand that it can feel discouraging to think about this really immense like this displacement of this distribution of power, which is so unbelievably unfair. But again, I think knowledge is power, and that's where one can start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just like you said before, it was this like just hippies or those flower people are trying to change the world and trying to diminish them and this
they were
kind of thing. And nowadays we have like things like the carbon footprint, for example. That's something that I think like last year or something only I learned that the carbon footprint term came from big oil originally, to try to get people to say like, okay, you have to change something so they can get out of that. And as you said, like knowledge is power, and we have fortunately in the last, I would say like 10 years or something, as the internet has grown and has been more and more connected, and you have those whistleblowers to have those leaks.
Definitely.
At least you have so many information, just like on so many topics, and you can at least do an informed decision. But like you said, if you have the means to do so. And the other thing is, how could we change this for the rest of the population that can't? That is something that, as I said, I don't have any clear path to that, because like I said, manufacturing, for example, like how can you do manufacturing for clothing that is sustainable but also affordable for people, for all people?
And in a layer that is even more more deep than that, do we need to fabricate more clothes at all in the world?
That goes back to the term of like reuse and repair, because we probably have enough material already lying somewhere in the dump, because lots of people just throw stuff away, and so many things are like it's a kind of horrible topic, but I'm also glad that you speak about that in depth, because I think it's important to at least reflect on that. And maybe I at least hope that some listeners haven't heard of some of those things and maybe inform themselves on more and try to find a way to contribute to the right direction at least.
It is a shock, but without it, I mean, life would be boring, or I don't know. It's difficult, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's difficult, yeah. Mm-hmm. But going back a bit, because you mentioned Earth FM for a while, and also I said it in the intro, but we haven't spoken about what is Earth FM. So maybe you can give us like a brief overview what this is.
Sure. So Earth FM is a completely free platform, and it's also a non-profit that we sometimes frame it as like Spotify for nature sounds. And, as you said, we have, I think now we surpassed 750 recordings from many, 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 many places of the world. Like a lot of is kind of covered. And I was brought into this project actually via George Vlad, because he has been one of the earliest contributors with some of his recordings, along with Mark Anderson. I think they were like the two prominent field recordists that started to add a lot of points to the map. Initially, actually, there was a map that I think is called Nature Map that belonged to Mark Anderson. His project is known by Wild Ambience. He's from Australia, and he records a lot in that region. Not only, but a lot in those regions. And then Katalin Zorzini, which is the founder of Earth FM, he told me once that he, like, the very primary idea, or the very origin actually for the project, was because he fell in love with whale song. He practices meditation a lot, and I think he found a lot of maybe he should be saying, but I think he did found a lot of solace, with listening to these sounds of nature. And I think he really believes in like bringing some sort of peace and comfort, in this very busy world, with lots of all sorts of pollution, mental pollution, sound pollution, light pollution, device pollution, everything. And to help people not only to just use it, to relax, because that's also something that we could definitely debate, but but actually to be a bit aware and be in like more connection with nature, because also, I mean, it's also a privilege to access certain spaces where the pollution is very reduced, right?
Yeah.
It's also, a lot of people don't have access, and then why not, I wonder how a forest in some part of Australia sounds, and then if you are curious, we can go to the internet, go to Earth FM, and pick a point and understand how these places sound. And I think this is really it's really cool. It's very, very interesting. And besides the all the sounds that we have been collecting, we also have ways to support artists. We have a blog where we debate a lot of these themes that we were talking about, and some other stuff. One of more recent articles was even about animal rights, for example, and animal welfare, which was written by Neil Clark, which is one of the writers for Earth FM. I write some stuff there also sometimes. Interviews. I am now very happily producing a podcast with interviews with artists and field recordists that also participate on Earth FM. Soon to be released. Can I pull the plug?
Cool. Looking forward to that.
And it's been great because I really, really have been learning a lot. And so it's constantly developing because it requires a big team. I mean, I cannot say we're like 30 people, but maybe we're around 10 people or something like that, from web developers, designers, me as a field recordist, people that manage, like also Jan, who is also a field recordist that also works with us, or that we work all together. Kind of, it's more like it's more like a very self-autonomous kind of organism going, which I also really appreciate. And and very much our goal has been like that. And then there was talks precisely about this unbalance of who is representing which countries,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then this idea of providing a grant to folks from the global south happen. So now, we were working with 5 people: 1 person from Kenya, 1 person from Ghana, 1 person from Myanmar, 1 person from Trinidad and Tobago, and 1 person from India. And it's also a bit also because of all these dynamics that we were talking about in early in the conversation. It's also a bit of a balance to not kind of whitewash what we want from them in a way. I'm not sure if it's like very very clear, but
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like people in diverse places of the world, they think differently and they relate different to their surroundings. And so there has been really like talk consideration between us in to give them as much liberty as possible to do what they want in a way. Like, of course, the goal is for them to record the so-called nature sounds. But if they later on decide they want to do something else, it's completely up to them. So our focus is we gave them the technology. We are sharing all the knowledge possible. We're here to mentor, if they have any technical question or any, even abstract question if they want to discuss. We're here to share our knowledge or what we think it is. But I must say that I'm learning a lot from just chatting with them, actually. So I think for me the best thing is actually has been this interaction between us,
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. And thanks to this initiative, we now start to fill these gaps. Now we have a lot of sounds from India. We start to have a lot of sounds from East Africa. We have sounds from Ghana also, and it's made by people who live there. And this is, for me, is very important.
That is nice.
And for us, for the team,
their unfiltered like experience and their view, or what would you call a view for ears? I have no idea, but like their ears for the nature. Supplying the sounds. That is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's their experience. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is very cool.
So it has been developing. We're working on an app so that people can stream and there's also like memberships in place if people would, like to support the project, which would be very appreciated also. So we can keep things flowing, but all the content is free, because like there's no ads. Of course, it's really non-profit, and so if you go and you want to spend 20 hours listening to nature continuously, you can do that. There's not going to be a break or something saying now pay to listen to more. So that's not happening.
And like, how many submissions do you get, like typically in like during a week or a month or?
Well, it varies. Also, like one of my roles is as a curator, so I'm also kind of chasing. I'm chasing artists. So yeah, how terrible to to listen to field recordings from all over the world. Is what a job filled with suffering. Yeah, very hard job, really tough. But it's to be honest, sometimes there's 1-2 weeks where nothing is coming, and then we have like a massive like oh, here's 10 tracks from Romania or something, so or from many parts of the world. But it's very varied. But I think in the last like 3 months we topped maybe 80 new recordings or something.
It's quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And the process, it takes a little bit. Like I have to go through all the recordings, because I need to be sure that they are first suitable within the guidelines, and then which implies also that they are very well edited. Sometimes there's some edits that I notice, or no, that is a good recording. Or sometimes it's complicated because sometimes you have human sound pollution or something that is very very much on the back, and then we need to understand if that is okay or not. And so there's all these things. But if I receive like a submission of 10 recordings of 1 hour each, I have to listen to the 10 recordings. I am not complaining, definitely.
Yeah, but still, I mean, at some point your ears get fatigued and you need to like rest. So it takes a lot of time to listen to 10 hours of recordings, of course.
Yeah. With a lot of pleasure, obviously. But I mean, this means that it's not an automatic process that it has to go through this, not screening, but I don't know, the equivalent for curating.
Yeah, I think it's a good word, like using curating, because and that also speaks to the quality. I mean, I've listened to some recordings already, like many times, and I really like it. I also have something that I'm probably gonna submit. So
great.
Hopefully,
looking forward. Yeah.
But I mean, speaking of yourself, and if you're recording yourself, what I wanted to ask you is, do you have any like feeling of what you yourself, what your influence is on the source material when you record it? Like, do you feel like you're trying to be like very, very open-eared and listen to the place and then try to capture like a snippet that's representative of this place, or what's your approach to recording?
That is a very good question. I think it's in transformation a lot. Also depends on the scope of the project. Let's say if there's a specific project, with another identity, identity, or institution, or a project with some kind of other organization.
Yeah.
I do want to have an open ear. But because of this sanitizing of recordings that we've been talking about, I've noticed myself actually feeling very negative in the field. And this happened to me just a few days ago that I was recording around here. And I left. It was still left from home. I just decided to walk for a bit until I reached this point where I know there's a lot of starlings and goldfinches, and I was seeing a lot of bird activity during the day. So I was curious, because usually I'm not so much here in the winter. And so I go on this little path, and it was so silent. It was unbelievably quiet. So you couldn't hear anything at all, until I reached this patch of trees and all the doves starting to leave the trees. I'm like, oh no, I'm scaring them. And then I set everything by the lake, and the only thing that you can hear is the fish jumping in the water. Only that. It was also like extreme fog, like zero visibility. It was like this almost completely dark. It was starting to open, but still was completely dark. And then the dogs start to bark. And it's a village, so, one dog starts and then you have like 50 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the sheep start. And then the hunting somewhere starts. So I start to hear shotguns also.
Oh.
And and then there was a mosquito,
A whole orchestra.
Yeah, like coming into my wrists and into my ankles. I forgot to bring like socks to cover, everything properly.
I know that pain, yeah.
Yeah, and I started to get really annoyed at everything, and then I also felt really stupid because I'm thinking, oh, they are ruining my recording, and then I'm like, this is really ridiculous because I'm in this place and I myself am looking for this to be sanitized to my taste, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since this day. Because, and look, I don't like dogs. I mean, not that I wish them any bad, but I hate the dog barking sound. I really cannot stand them. And obviously I hate to hear gunshots. The sheep, no, it's funny. I was laughing a little bit, inside because they sound a bit like drunk people,
Yes.
But it was not really what I was kind of hoping for, but I felt that was so selfish,
Yeah.
I'm not saying this, to try to seem, whatever, but I thought that what I wanted to have from here, it was not representing the reality. And okay, I don't like to hear, I think it's, too much dogs, too many dogs. I hate the hunting part, even though it's cultural. And so, I cannot really, come from a judgmental place. We can also speak about overgrazing, even though I don't really think it's the case specifically here. But I felt a really stupid person then, so it's difficult to come with an open ear when then the soundscape doesn't give you what you want, but it's like, but it's not, I cannot request.
Yeah, it's not a jukebox. That is, we've talked about on this podcast. I've talked with a lot of guests about this, and especially about this. Like, you go out to record something specific, and then something happens, and you get annoyed because you're not the only one that had this exact experience. And
of course not. Yeah,
that is, of course. And for me, for example, it's not the dogs. For me, it's airplanes. I really, really hate airplanes because I only noticed them way too late. I noticed the sound, and then I know like the last 10 minutes probably were ruined. Because I was in the zone and just enjoying nature. Yeah, you can't do anything. Yeah, right. And so that's and I'm trying to be as mindful as possible about this, and just like with all things that go wrong, try to at first, my gut reaction should be a smile, and if I can manage that, then the whole day is good, because whatever happens doesn't matter. In the end, it's just like we're just silly people doing stuff with microphones in the woods. So, I mean, yeah, as you said, it's not a jukebox. You can't request anything, and sometimes even if you're then not too annoyed, but can like switch, then you might find something interesting and record something interesting even. Or not, or you just like laugh and say, okay, I wanted to record something quiet, and then this whole thing started, and now everything is loud, and it is kind of funny. So, yeah,
or at least I had the walk, and I smelled this land, this thing, because I was also thinking, I was feeling so grumpy in a way, And then I stayed for a couple of hours or something to see if I could get something quote beautiful or something. And then I came back home. I was feeling a bit frustrated, but also like already awkward with these thoughts in mind. And I was thinking, damn, like this search for this ideal soundscape ruined my experience in nature completely. Like, I didn't really like touch anything, I didn't, smell like how the ground is fresh, in this time of the day. It's just, I barely appreciated actually what I had then.
Yeah.
just for the sake of this so-called perfection. And this for me, like, I felt almost disgust about myself in this context.
Yeah.
But you know, on the other hand, so many times, like, I remember the first time that it was in Sweden when I lived there in Stockholm, that I went into these woods at night around 10 p.m. in the summer, so it was, you know, daylight. And this for me was also novelty, because, you know, from Portugal at 10 is dark, and in Sweden it's like, it's, you know, it's completely beautiful thing. And I had a Zoom H4n, and I had the OKM Soundman microphone. So it's like, it's two tiny omnidirectional microphones that you can put in the ears, like earbuds. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I have those as well, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think probably many people now are using them, because they're also relatively accessible in terms of price. And so that's what I could, you know, afford at the time also. And I'm in the middle of the forest, you know, I'm by myself, and all this bird song at 10 p.m. And it was like, wow, this is incredible, like really, really, really incredible. And also because it was one of the little islands outside Stockholm, because all this archipelagos thing. Of course, it had some noise pollution, but it, you know, it's not comparable to being close to town, right?
Yeah.
And so that didn't exist, and I was like, well, this is like a fairy tale, you know. And I was really, and I only left. I think I was only there for 10 minutes because I was being eaten alive by mosquitoes. But this is the thing, you know, very completely out of the bat, like in a surprising way. I was really taking, you know, and this was very transformative actually in my practice, you know, because suddenly I was kind of confronted with all this. I think birdsong can be very beautiful, most of it, you know, but, you know, in also these beautiful forests. So these surprises also happen, you know.
Yeah, those happen constantly. I mean, it's like, and you really need to, like, I mean, not you specifically, we all really need to be aware of when the frustration comes, just like you said, afterwards you will say like, oh, and I didn't even appreciate nature. Then just like switch off your microphones and just record it, and just look around, see what you can see, feel, smell, be there, present.
Yeah.
And then it's not a loss, because it's like it's never a loss when you go out in nature, even if you didn't manage to record anything nice, or even if it was like dogs barking. But still, there are trees, there are rivers, there's just so many beautiful things around you. So.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sensorial experience, right? It's, I mean, even the sheep. Then then they were I encountered them, and you know, I think they look super funny. It's just they look really, really funny to me, you know, and how they behave in groups. So I was like, yeah, this is really cool. But then the interesting thing also is that as I'm returning home and I start to enter like the streets area, then the starlings were all singing. I'm like, oh man, I go to that place to record something that I hope is going to be beautiful. But what I think is really beautiful is just here in the street where I live, you know?
Yeah. Oh, life is funny that way, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and speaking of beautiful things to record, I also definitely wanted to ask you about your recent field recordings from Brazil, because it just, I think it hasn't been that long since you released it on Bandcamp, right?
I think it was maybe 2 years, the last album. Something like
really?
that. Yeah, I'm a bit lost in time. A year and something. Yeah, the trip was done way before, but I thought I didn't have good material actually. And when I revisited, like when I start to take out the recordings, you know, from the folders and everything, and I go through them, I'm like, this is actually nice. I think I maybe should make an album. Then I did.
All right. So yeah, what was like your process of creating that album? Or I mean, with all your field recording albums, is it like, just like you said, is it that you afterwards like compile something, or do you already go into the recording sessions with the goal of compiling something?
Yeah, I try, I like to spend as many days as I can in a given place. I think only the album of the Swedish forest, I think I was only there for like 4 to 5 days, but you know, there was a lot of logistics that were not really depending on me. I was dependent on another person, so you know, that's what I had. But I'm really happy with with the result. really, really happy. It was the right time. It was the right place. Everything came together very nicely. But generally, I just try to get as much variation as I can, like recording in different spots in the area and record at different times of the day, and to try also to get a sense of place and to have this variety, which is not super easy, because there are some spots where sometimes you can, if you record for 3 days in a row, for example, it's almost guaranteed that it's going to be super cool, because things are happening all the time. It's always different. It's the beauty of nature field recording. It's always different. So it was not without a little bit of restlessness that I was moving away the equipment to another spot, sometimes, to go, I don't know, across one lake or deeper in the forest or closer to the house or, or whatever. And sometimes the further I went, the worse the recordings became. Sometimes when I thought that, I was like, oh, this is so isolated, and is this place with a lake and this wall and so on. And then I listened back to the recording, this crap. And I was like, okay, I'm never even going to publish this anywhere. It's horrible recording. So I try to do that, but then I have a very personal and very intense process of listening afterwards. That I really listen to everything. It takes a lot of time. That's also why I think kind of my projects, or most of them, they end up like being kind of unfinished all the time in some way, because I also like to try to ID species that that have been recorded, and I am not good at, like, I know few bird songs and few other animals sounds, but the field recording community and also a lot of ornithologists are so open and so available to help out to identify. I think it's also cool. They seem intrigued and curious also to understand what something is. So this is a beautiful thing that exists, very generalized in the community, that people are really very helpful, and really out of heart, really, without wanting something in return or anything. I think it's very selfishless in that aspect. And then I mean, of course, the recording technically should be, okay, without, I don't know, wind distorting the microphone or something like that, for the purposes of what I want, of course. I mean, it's context for a lot of stuff. And without, major interferences, or, you know what I'm talking about, some sort of technical perfection, if we can, use that vocabulary. And it's a lot of what it speaks to me, like emotionally. Sometimes it's just passages, really. Sometimes I have really long recordings. This is on the Wolf Soundscape album. That is, I have a really long track that has one cricket and a fox really far away. And I really thought, I am shooting myself in the foot by putting this thing. But people can swap to the next track if that becomes too much for them or something, But I think it's also necessary to create this almost negative space sometimes in a concept. But I remember the first one that I did. It is Nocturnal Sounds from the Atlantic Forest. It was a chronological choice, not that they have been all recorded in the same day, but I started with a dawn chorus, and then it went throughout the evolution of the night until day, pieces from one day and then the other, but kind of now it's around midnight. Not that I was choosing because of the time specifically, but it went on a chronological order until the dawn chorus. But I wanted actually to give this kind of story, this passage of time as a story kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I cannot say that there is like extremely objective intention. Now I want J sounds, and now I want a wolf or something. It can happen in some instances a little bit, but it's not that objective. I really go with the flow. And how I think an album, I think about it as an album and not just a lot of tracks in an album. For me, there's some kind of sequence, but I think it makes sense to me. It doesn't mean that it can make sense that it would make perfect sense to everyone else, at least not the way that I see it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say that I find them very, very, very good.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed listening to all of them. And especially, as I said, like the wolf sounds, that was the first thing I listened to, and that really drew me in because, I really felt that like it was a well curated album and not just like, as I said, like a bunch of tracks and field recordings, not just like a trip and then you come back with this bag of everything, but it was like, it felt like, everything had its place. So,
nice. Good
very,
to
very
know.
good.
Thank you very much.
Happy to give you that feedback. Yeah. And maybe also on the topic of recording, because I like to ask that my guests as well, do you maybe have any recommendations for gear or any tips? And I'm especially not looking for like maybe a special microphone or something, but maybe something benign or something that you've learned over the years. Just an example, like a friend of mine told me he always has like a gardening glove with him, because if he wants to like record something and has to pick up some rocks or something or break something, then garden glove. He hurt his hand so many times that now he always has a garden glove in his pack, and I have that as well now. So
interesting. Well, mosquito repellent.
Oh yeah, that's a good tip. Yeah.
Often, I mean, I definitely regretted, this instance I was talking about, that I, left it at home. I was not counting on mosquitoes on the winter, so another lesson learned from someone who loves to go out in nature that didn't think about the most basic thing. Yeah, interesting in that regard. Sometimes, if I feel that I have enough peace of mind, because I have many things running in my head all the time at the same time. I know many of people struggle with this, and it's very tiring sometimes. But sometimes I take a notebook, and this is actually part of my process. Like for every place that I record, I have a notebook just for that, in which I take whatever notes, and I have both notes on the field and notes when I'm listening back at home, after the recordings, or 1 year after even maybe, I just write whatever about the place. Like again, it's not a set method, but because I choose to remain quiet when I am recording, I with enough distance from the microphones, of course. I try to just noticing small things or some impressions, or even sometimes ideas that come to mind, and that allows me to make some sort of emotional connection, something on that level, or memories. Maybe it doesn't mean that I'm like connected with nature, like Snow White or something like that. It's just I have those kind of moments sometimes, but not that the animals come around me and everything starts to appear, not like that.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
I know
love
those moments.
to, man. I want to have a wild boar as a friend. I'm really into this fantasy now, but sometimes I do that. I know it's not necessarily what you can call a piece of gear, but it's something that I find really cool for myself to do it myself. But I don't know, in general terms regarding equipment, there's all the budget constraints, that some people have more than others. But I think that the best investment one can do is proper mounts and wind protection. I really think that if you have to put money on something when you start, it's that definitely, because otherwise you're ruined in many instances. But above all, it's really important to know the gear, really know your gear very well. I can tell you that we have recordings on Earth FM that are made only with a Zoom H4n. But they are so intentional, and the person who I know, one person specifically that is that does it, they know what they are doing. So you would never be, all this hiss or this, it's that doesn't happen. So of course, if you can upgrade a little bit, obviously do it, right? But I think it's the most important, because if we don't develop knowledge about how the electronic circuitry is working, Doesn't mean that you need to know the the electronic circuit in detail or something like that, or even fundamental aspects of physics or acoustics. Then it doesn't matter if you're gonna buy a really expensive gear, I think. I mean, you can also just randomly have better results, but I think it's cool to kind of know what you have in your hands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that also informs then your decision of what to buy next, because you feel where it's lacking and where like the gear is holding you back. Just like you said, like for example, wind protection. If you at some point you realize, okay, I need wind protection for some of those things, and it's a very good tip to have that early on. But other things as well. I mean, depending on what you record. For example, I just finally upgraded to a 32-bit recorder because I have a lot of things. I do a lot of Foley work as well for video games, and sometimes I need those like very loud sounds, and it was very, very tedious to always have to try to adjust the gain. Now I have way more leeway, and I can like really not lose any performance because of that. But yeah, that just happened because of all the. I also had a Zoom H for a long, long time.
Who didn't?
Yeah, of course.
All of us. It was our first for many
weapon of
people.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, but also I was talking about this with Niels Mosch precisely once, and I think we were talking about also like 24 versus 32-bit, and I don't remember the specific context, but then he said, I just think the best equipment that you have is the one that you have on your hands at that moment. And
absolutely,
yeah.
Nathan Moody said this as well on our podcast here, and it's a credo that's really true, because doesn't matter if you have expensive equipment. If you're out in the field and hear something and you don't have it, then it doesn't matter. So whatever you have, whatever you can afford, and as you said, you can make great recordings with that. And I also heard from people that have worked on like AAA projects and big movies, and they have recordings in there that they actually did with their phone, because at that moment they had the phone with them, and it wasn't like something that needed to be super quiet, and that got used in the end in a high quality product. So gear really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I've been there also, it sometimes happens.
Yeah, of course. And sometimes there's a very beautiful recording with like a mobile phone, which is always astounding, but yeah, that happens.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I really have left for now, because we have been talking for a long while now, is I just wanted to ask you if you have any interesting projects you're working on, or any shout outs you want to have.
I've been really digging into recordings of some field recordists that I really, really like. And one is Vladimir Arkhipov. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly. And I think he's a naturalist, I think also photographer from Russia. And he has many recordings through many places in the country. And there's something really special about his recordings. They are all really, really beautiful, and I think one of his recordings, I think, is going to be my favorite for a very long time, and it's called Dreams of Bears. And I don't know how we got this, but you can actually hear like a mama bear and 2 or 3 cubs like gently snoring, but they are all filled with this really beautiful sense of, I don't know, beauty. So I really, really like his work. And there's another one from Australia that I got to know his work also this year through Earth FM, and it's called Christos Nizamis from Australia. And they are really unique as well. Again, they have this aesthetical sense that I think is, I cannot say the word, but filled with beauty. And they're very inspiring. And also, I think that what they transmit, they tell these really beautiful stories about the place and relationship to place that I find that is really valuable. So, yeah, within the many great, works that I've been listening this year, I think these are, the two that really, come to my attention. It feels like I just want to plug something, no?
Yeah, I mean that's the spot where you plug something, so feel free.
Yeah, man, it's it's so interesting for me to talk to other people, to listen to their practices, and how they view things. And sometimes I'm a bit kicked in the butt also. I challenge, for example, one of the people that I've talked to is Felix Bloom, which has a very interesting practice. I've been following his work for some years now, and it's not that he kicked me in the butt in a way that he was trying to teach me something. Not at all. Like, it was nothing like that. But I really came in with a perspective, and he really offered me the good side of of what I was kind of criticizing. And this really allows me to grow a lot, and to specifically understand how people are involved, even like with their philosophy of life, with their work. This is really, I feel really fulfilled when I do this type of job. And then there's field recordings going in and out of the interviews also, so it's like it has this undulating form kind of thing. So hopefully I'm trying to bring just more than a conversation. So this is what has been happening a little bit more recently. I have also started to work on something on my own, but I don't want to speak about it yet.
Ooh, secrets. Okay, I'm very much looking forward to hear what else you're gonna work on, and also like the Earth FM podcast. I'm of course gonna link it here. Very, very much excited about that as well.
Yeah, can I just share like some final word on very positive side of like field recording that I think maybe it's nice?
Of course.
I've always felt this, that with the field recording, more specifically also people who are more putting more time and effort to record more natural sounds, there is really no competition, in the way that even though field recording can maybe at first glance seem, guys that go with microphones and record zebras or lake or fish, whatever, bird song or something. Each person is so different, on their background, the things that they like, how they view the world, that I can even record the same thing as you, kind of, go to the same place as you and record, but it's always going to be different, because our approaches are going to be different, because somehow, even though it can seem that it's a little bit objective, like an objective work, it never is. So I think that this really allows also for more cooperation between people. A lot of people say this. I have the same experience. Like, it's extremely rare to have like friction with another field recordist, right?
Yeah.
I think, and I really hope it's most people's experience. I hope I'm not wrong. Like, it's my experience, and some people that I talk to, they really feel the same. And and even though there's all these dynamics that we can interplay, take in consideration and so on, it's really incredible how unique it is. And even within people that have very similar approaches, I really notice, and I listen to a lot of different field recordings, a lot of different recordings, but to me it's so clear, specifically some field recordists that have a very marked aesthetics of their work. And I can swear that there's at least like 3 or 4 that, if I'm hearing something and I'm not told where it is or who is recording, I can tell who it is, because the sense, what they look for, the way that they record, it's very unique to them. And I think this is like, it's just really, 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 really beautiful. And I hope that, with all these things, we can all grow together, in a way, and support each other's work, because why not?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's some beautiful words for the ending of this episode. So thank you again for being my guest. I really, really appreciate it. I was looking forward to speaking with you, and I hope we can speak again in the future.
Yeah, thank you. It was very nice. Thank you for listening to me for so long.
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.